Everyone, depending on where you're joining us from in the world. I'm Ryan Duguid, the Chief Product Officer at Contact Monkey, and I'm your host for today. By way of background, I've been in the software space, enterprise B2B, for around about 30 years now. And most notably before Contact Monkey, working at Microsoft on a little product you might have heard called SharePoint, a key part of that company's strategy to internal communications. Joined by a storied group of folks from across AppSpace and Contact Monkey. We have Chris Burek, a Senior Product Marketing Manager at AppSpace, Will White, Director of Strategic Workspace Innovations, and Bronwyn, Product Manager for my team, who's responsible for our partnership and our integration with the AppSpace team and platform. Today, we're going to be talking about the criticality of cohesive omni-channel approach to internal communications and how between AppSpace and Contact Monkey, we're working together to bridge the worlds of intranet, digital signage, and email. Really taking a deep look at all the ways that we can engage with our employees across the organization and figuring out how to most effectively reach them with a cohesive strategy. And now more than ever, we're living in the reality of a distributed workforce in a post-COVID world where hybrid and remote work are the new norm, where we have companies with people deployed all around the world in different roles, different facilities, different time zones. It's key that we achieve a unified communication strategy and that we're able to reach all our employees, all our workers through the right channels at the right time to drive alignment, to drive clarity, to drive purpose and belief, and to drive action to help people get their work done on a day-to-day basis. At Contact Monkey and AppSpace, we believe that the key to success of this strategy is to get the right message through the right tools at the right time, and to drive a consistency across that message, to really leverage all the different channels, whether that's internet, digital sign, tools like Slack, email, and SMS, to make sure that we can get the message out through the right channels, personalized in the right way to the right people at the right time. And with that, what I want to do is kick things off by handing over to Chris to share his insights from an app space perspective on how they're bringing these different channels together and how we're partnering together to achieve that objective.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. So we at AppSpace and Contact Monkey believe that consistency in communication isn't just a nice to have, it's a fundamental workforce equity issue. In the modern hybrid workplace, where an employee sits shouldn't dictate the quality or the accuracy of the information that they receive. But the data shows a significant gap between what an employee needs and what they're currently experiencing in the workplace. So if you see here, a staggering 85% of employees feel their organization could be doing more to improve their overall employee experience. Over 80% of employees rank consistent communication as very or extremely important to their success and engagement at work. But despite that importance, only 69% of employees report their organization delivers inconsistent messaging across different channels. So when your deskless workers are seeing one thing on a digital sign, your remote workers are reading something else in an email, and your office teams are hearing a third version on Slack, you aren't just creating confusion, you're creating an unequal environment where some people are in the loop and others are left behind. Next slide. Okay, so it's time for a quick poll. How many unique tools does your team use just to send out a single high stakes announcement? So in the poll, just list the number of tools your team uses. And while those numbers come in, let's talk about the manual tax. Every time you have to copy, paste, reformat, or re-upload the same message, you're paying a tax on your own time. So if it takes you 20 minutes to move a message across 3 different channels and you do that twice a week, you're losing 14 days a year. That's 2 full weeks of your life spent acting like a human bridge between software. Nobody wants that, right? I know I don't. So let's see. Do we have the results of that poll?
My suspicion is a lot of what I call swivel chair integration. People
Sure.
one screen up with one set of information, one on the other, and copy pasting between tools. That's what I usually see people doing.
That sounds about right. Um, yeah, I'm not sure it's I'm sure it's no secret that email is still the most widely used tool for communications. Ryan, how are you seeing teams using email today?
Yeah, I think that the key part of it is often it's a very top-down strategy, very much getting leadership messages out, key messages that are typically on that, that weekly, that monthly, quarterly cadence that helps people understand the rhythm of the business. And as I mentioned before, sort of a contact monkey, we think about this idea of alignment, belief, and action. And alignment is really starting at the vision level and saying, hey, do we all understand where we're going as an organization? Do we understand our vision, our mission, and what we're trying to achieve? And then as you bring that down into a quarterly or a monthly or even a weekly basis, it's about making sure that people's beliefs are aligned with that vision and mission and that we've got everybody rowing in the same direction. And it's about making sure that people are taking the right action on a day-to-day basis to help us on our path. And those actions can be as simple as signing up for benefits enrollment. It can be taking part in corporate events. It can be about key meetings that have to happen. But it's getting that information out in a way that's consumable, in a way that's shareable between different people in the organization. So with that, let's talk about why email remains the high stakes channel in the organization. Now, what I'm always amused by, and as I mentioned, I've been around for a long time now in this space, is this idea that email's dead. And I always like to retort to that, email's dead, long live email. So 4 years now, and I've had a chance of working with and against some of these people. Tech luminaries like David Sachs at Yammer or Stuart Butterfield at Slack have been professing email's dead. It's a terrible way to communicate. It's not how the modern worker likes to work. And I always think these folks live in well, partly a little bit of a fantasy land. I always love people innovating in technology and trying to find new ways to do things. But partly in a fantasy land and partly in a little bit of an echo chamber. Oftentimes where I hear email is dead, and just by the way, I've spent time living in Silicon Valley. It's usually from the Silicon Valley bubble set, right? And it's essentially a set of folks that are looking at a particular type of worker that works in a particular environment, where maybe some of this rapid fire communication is sort of the exclusive way they get things done. But tends to be, even when that works internally, it's not a particularly effective way to communicate, beyond the corporate walls as well. And so while people would profess that potentially email is dead, I see the reality is that email is more prominent now than ever. I certainly know that when I look in my own inbox and the flow of information, that holds true for me. And why? Because I think it's still the primary place for most desk-bound workers to go to receive critical corporate communications. Most people I know in our data at Contact Monkey suggest this. Every day around about 8:30, 9 a.m. are logging in, they're checking their email, they're figuring out what's going on in the business, and they're using that as a way to kick off the day. But again, that's a particular type of worker. And I think when we talk about the omni-channel strategy, it's key to understand the employees that we have, their roles, where they're working, and what kinds of technology they have access to. I'm fairly sure now every one of us has an email client in our pocket 24/7, 365. Sometimes I wish I didn't, but I have a new iPhone right beside me to prove that out. And so email is still that core place where messages land, especially from leadership, especially from management. It's still where we share insights into vision, strategy, and objectives. And it's still where we tell our people what they need to do operationally every day, week, month, quarter, and year to keep the wheels turning in the organization, to help us grow our business, to serve our stakeholders, to drive revenue, to drive profitability. It's still how we share information inside and outside our corporate walls. And when done the right way, I think it's a key way to reinforce what employees are seeing through all the different communication tools that work in the enterprise. As I mentioned before, we have intranets, we have digital signs, we have Slack, we have SMS. We still have posters on the wall in the cafeteria notice board or on the hallways of our organizations. But the challenge is that email can often be disconnected from every other type of communication in the organization. And when it's disconnected, we see communication specialists like all of you burning a lot of cycles to ensure that messages are consistently delivered. And what does that look like? It's copy pasting content. I mentioned swivel chair integration. It's reformatting information for different channels. And oftentimes we're losing consistency and clarity of message along the way. Moreover, we're losing visibility into what actually works and how to optimize our efforts for different channels and different audiences, with a lack of a cohesive analytics strategy to drive those insights to make things better for our people over time. And so, with that, let's talk a little bit about the opportunity for email. I've talked about the challenges with it, But what are some of the things we can do if we just jump to the next slide and look at how we can address some of these core concerns? Well, the answer clearly isn't replacing email because many have tried and most have failed. But to be effective, email has to be an integral part of a broader strategy. It has to be targeted to the right audiences because one thing we can tell you from our own insights, looking at all our customers through and through, is if you send the same message to everyone all the time, email fatigue sets in. And no amount of A/B testing, subject lines or moving things around in the body, trying to figure out how to tweak and tune and optimize and game the system is going to get a better level of engagement within your organization. Typically what we're seeing when done right is you can start to push up beyond 75, 80% engagement with emails, higher click-through rates, greater read times. But when it's done wrong, you start to trend down to very low engagement rates. So how do you solve for that? You have to make email personalized, not just dear first name, but relevant to role, location, priorities. You have to deliver in a timely fashion. As a constant mistake we see people making with a global workforce is sending something at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And it turns out if you have workers in different time zones around the world, you should really optimize for their particular time zone and when they come up and start to engage with work. And the content has to be engaging, not just informative. Drive alignment, drive clarity, drive action. Finally, it has to be integrated across all your communications channels. So to help us unpack this and look at the strategic side of the shift and how omni-channel creation drives that better alignment and culture, I'd like to hand back to David to explore the options.
So I'm going to be covering this. I want to talk about the concept of omni creation. So as we learned earlier, email isn't the only communication channel out there. It's certainly the primary one. So how do you ensure everyone sees those important announcements? With AppSpace, it's not just about publishing anywhere. It's also about creating anywhere. We orchestrate your entire tech stack so you can pull in content from various sources and amplify it across your entire workforce without having to manually reformat that content to fit each communication channel. So when these content silos are broken, it means consistent messaging across your entire organization and frontline workers have access to the same information as everyone else. So now this siloed content flows into your digital signage, your intranet, and even your contact monkey emails. Next slide. So compare this approach to a more manual one. You can see how it can save communicators a ton of time. The traditional way is slow and often leads to inconsistent messaging. Orchestration is all about guaranteed reach. So I'm going to hand it off to Will now, who's going to help everyone visualize how this all works.
Sure, thanks, Chris. And yeah, I think honestly, let's jump to the next slide because it kind of illustrates this concept of omni creation. So as Chris mentioned, right? Historically, we've talked a lot about maybe omni publishing, omni channel publishing, not just AppSpace, not just Contact Monkey, but many folks have talked about that concept. But omni creation takes us to the next level because it is as wonderful a world it would be if you just had one tool where you create your content and that's kind of it, you're done. As we've been talking about, right? That's not reality. No matter how hard we try, there's always going to be different channels, different creation tools, authoring tools, content sources, and so on. So this slide attempts to capture some of that. Alrighty, everyone. I just had a big giant thing fall off a shelf on me here. Fun thing for a live webinar. All right. I'll get to that in a second. So the idea on the left side of the screen, if everyone's awake now, is we've got all of our different content sources. That could be AppSpace, right? AppSpace has a robust content creation tool, whether that's for signage or intranet, right, on your mobile devices, etc. Right? You create stories that you've got a full rich text editor, AI tools to help you author. You can actually gate certain elements of certain audiences. But that content might live elsewhere. It might be in your SharePoint intranet, right, or other intranet. It might be coming from WordPress. I've had AppSpace customers pull in content from ServiceNow, things like that. Essentially can feed into AppSpace, and then AppSpace can act as the tool, the orchestrator, to get that content elsewhere. It could be within the AppSpace world, right, publishing out to different topics so that content is easy to look up and find. Maybe within different communities. So AppSpace has that feature where maybe it's a community for your team, your division, maybe for your location, or maybe it's like a fun pet picture community, whatever the case may be. Different channels, publishing different target audiences or different endpoints, including digital signage, right? Getting that content in non-traditional spaces, especially when you're thinking about like intranet content that's usually a little bit wordier. Even taking over screens, and then of course getting that content elsewhere as well, which is what we're talking about today. Some examples here on this slide, maybe actually redirecting that content after it's been enhanced, which we'll get to, back into SharePoint or directly into Teams or Slack or WebEx or things like that. If we move on a little bit, I want to kind of expand on that concept and actually introduce another concept into the mix, something we call content atoms. And that's where these become really critical. Because if you're pulling that content from all those original sources, that doesn't mean they're gonna shine. It doesn't mean they're gonna be the most effective when you push them to all those different endpoints, the different communication channels. So, for example, we want to break down those pieces of content, those stories, those news articles, whatever they might be, into separate content atoms, right? The headline, the image, the summarization, the caption, the visuals, the quotes, etc., and then utilize those as needed to make sure they're most impactful, right? Kind of reuse and remix them for the audience and for the kind of context of that communication. In fact, that's what we're going to be doing here when we get into the integration that we're talking about today with app-based stories and an actual Content Monkey newsletter or email. So on the next slide, just to kind of, again, dig a little bit deeper into some of what this enables. We think of this entire process in the app space world certainly as app space orchestration, right? Taking that content and not just taking it from anywhere and getting it anywhere, but also making sure it shines, right? Remixing, like I said, those content atoms so that they're most effective. Of course, there's the actual integration piece. In the app space world, we call that passports, but that's making sure that the integration is not that swivel chair integration that Ryan was talking about, but an automatic, robust process. Ingesting it from anywhere, like I mentioned, but then as part of that process, adapting and optimizing. So that can mean a full-length SharePoint article detailing everything you want to know about maybe a new company policy. Well, when that gets published to, say, a digital sign, you don't want 8 paragraphs on a digital sign. That would make no sense, right? So we're going to pull the right atoms, get the appropriate visuals, the appropriate headline, maybe a nice QR code to redirect to the full content, right, on that digital signage. It's going to optimize and adapt that content for the audience. And again, you're going to see that in the Content Monkey world as well. We're also going to personalize it. We're going to, man, I'm having a time. I got a dog barking. We're going to personalize it, right? We're going to get it to the right audience based on, again, location, on role, on persona, maybe even tenure at the company, adapt and improve it, and automatically publish it to the right channels. And all along the way, you're going to get the data that you need to make sure that that communication was impactful, and also layer on even more fun features. I skipped this over in all the commotion. Maybe automatic narration, automatic translation. So again, if you're a native German speaker, you probably want to read in German. We're going to take care of that for you. So I'm going to mute and try to take care of my chaotic life and pass it back over here.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I am going to now take you through an example of how you can use AppSpace and Contact Monkey to distribute your information. So full workflow from content creation in AppSpace all the way through to amplifying your message in Contact Monkey. So let me quickly take over here. All right, we are starting in AppSpace. The goal here is to use an AppSpace story with all of its various atoms, like the images, headers, all the links you need to create your engaging content to make sure your employees are absorbing as much information as possible. Stories are the perfect medium for an immediate day-to-day announcement, such as our example here of a hybrid work policy. Making sure you're, again, engaging your employees. The goal is to push it out fast, get this content where it needs to be, and then amplify that reach without any extra work. So now we want to distribute this information. So the newsletter is prepped. We've got our weekly newsletter. We know what's going out and when, and now we have these important updates that need to be added to the newsletter. So we want to pull in that AppSpace story, but again, we don't want to be copy pasting in that work. There's no need to store this image on your computer and have to access it again through the integration. We are able to pull that all in for you and reduce those steps. So all we have to do here is have our newsletter ready, have our area where we want our content to go, and then we're going to pull in this AppSpace block. From here, with the integration, it pulls in all of the stories you've previously created along with other feeds. So if you have other areas that you need to pull stories from, no problem. You can access those, you can browse through, you can get your stories quickly and easily from AppSpace into Contact Monkey. So I am looking at our hybrid work guide. Just select my story and insert it in here. So below here as well, if you don't love the single column, you can actually add in your multi-column options as well. So I've got 3 more AppSpace stories that I've inserted in quickly. But let's say I don't love how big this image is. No problem. You can edit the way it looks within your email exactly the way you can with your regular email content. So let's adjust that image size. And let's maybe adjust our text color. All of your normal workflow can be adjusted to suit the newsletter. So we're reducing a lot of copy paste. We've pulled in your image from the AppSpace story. You've pulled in your header. We've pulled in a brief description. And we've also pulled in this read more link. So when a recipient receives this link, they are redirected to AppSpace, or sorry, yes, to your AppSpace story. And they are able to then get a brief description and then read that source of truth in case anything has changed there. So from here, we now get 2 layers of insight. We have our normal Contact Monkey analytics. So you get your email engagement analytics, one for your newsletter reach, and then you also get your AppSpace analytics. You get story data. Between the two, we can see how effective our nudge was. We can see the email or people clicking. You can look at your click maps and see, did people actually click the AppSpace stories, or were they potentially distracted by something else in your email? And then through AppSpace, you can see how effective your content was. Did they watch a video? Did they complete a poll? How far down the story did they go? So all in all, Contact Monkey gives you broad reach and that engagement email data, and then AppSpace centralizes your interactive source of truth and gives you more content depth data. Together, you can stop guessing, you can start making more data-driven decisions, and you can ensure your strategy is reaching your employees as effectively as possible. I'm done here. Chris, I think you are taking over.
Oh, just gonna unmute myself. Sorry about that. Awesome demo, Bronwyn. Yeah, so now let's talk about the ROI of our joint solution. One simple way to frame this is this really gets you more than just time back. You get unified data. You move past open rates and start measuring if your message actually resonates across your entire space, from the display in the lobby to employees' inboxes. Bronwyn, do you want to speak a little bit about some of the analytics that Contact Monkey provides?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. I know Ryan might be happy to jump in as well. Actually, Ryan, I'll let you take over here.
Sure. So I think the key is that a modern approach to email has to be focused on understanding what happens after you hit the send button. And I think historically most teams, and a lot of this comes from the marketing automation world as well, measure success in fairly simple ways. Did it send? Great. Yes or no. Uh, was it opened? How many people opened it? Over what period of time? Did they click on links and how long did they read it for? And these are interesting data points, but I like to think them of as lagging indicators. At the end of the day, when I talk to our users, our customers, ask them, hey, how would you describe your job? What's the goal of your job every day? It's certainly not to get people to open emails. I think the measure of success for the people who use our tool is not more opens. What was the point of the email? What were you trying to achieve when you sent it? What kind of behaviors were you trying to incent? What kind of actions were you trying to drive? And so while we can provide those core statistics, and they are important to measure and track, they do provide a proxy for impact, a proxy for engagement. It's key to understand at a deeper level. And that's through using things like surveys within your email capabilities to be able to understand, was this relevant? Did you understand it? How could we have improved it for you? And we have on our own roadmap a lot of investment going into that space. leveraging AI to be able to understand sentiment and feedback in a much more friction-free way than we have historically. But when I talk to customers, ultimately it's about understanding engagement. So instead of just knowing the content was distributed, was it consumed? Did it have the right impact? Did we drive it effectively across all the different channels? Where we've got different channels at play, which ones resonated the most and for what types of workers? So that double click or that drill down into the recipients of the communication, understanding what's their role, who's their manager, what business function they're in, what location are they in? Are they desk workers? Are they factory workers? Are they out in the field? What are all those attributes we know about those people, and how can we use those to more effectively target the communication? And really, that brings us a completely different level of insight. So, what does it look like in the platform? Well, we've got heat maps and read-time insights that show you real interaction with the emails. Beyond opens, we can help you understand how long people spend reading it. Beyond clicks, we can help you visualize their interaction patterns. And with those surveys, we can help you get real qualitative feedback at scale on the impact that you're having. Which sections drew their attention, which calls to action drove the behavior change and the activities you're looking for. But ultimately, beyond that delivery, we can show you the drill down, what we would call segmented stats, looking at all those different attributes, role, location, tenure within the company. Geez, even seen people looking at different t-shirt sizes as a differentiator between how people would engage with things. All that information that you can pull in from your HRIS system to help describe your employee population, we can help you segment your results based on that. So we can give you trends over time. We can give you continuous improvement tips and tricks and strategies from month to month, from campaign to campaign. And that's where you go from tactics to having a strategic program that's leveraging email alongside your other different communications channels. So Chris, back to you to talk about the roadmap to alignment.
Yeah, so this really starts with the strategy first. So establishing your content pillars. Atoms over articles, building modularly to ensure your news is ready to move. So pulling in all those various aspects of your email from AppSpace. Automating the mundane, so using the AppSpace and Contact Monkey integration for newsletters, and really eliminating the copy and paste necessity. So making this process much more seamless and fluid. And let's talk about the results. So the results really is a consistent high impact experience for every employee every time. So this really accelerates the process for creating communications, building your newsletters, with the ability to pull in existing content from AppSpace to create really captivating emails using Contact Monkey.
All right, time for Q&A. We have some questions in the Q&A area here. If you wish to add, please make sure you are adding there, but let's go through and answer a few. So the first question we can see is, can Contact Monkey content be easily converted to AppSpace digital sign? So what I'll say to this one is, the purpose of a newsletter in Contact Monkey and a digital sign, it's quite different, and the content needs to look very different. Like, you don't want to just send a newsletter to a digital sign because people aren't going to be reading that. So right now, the goal is to have you create your content in AppSpace and distribute out your information from there, because AppSpace can allow you to make a digital sign that suits the needs of the reader when they're in the factory, on the office floor. It needs to be concise, it needs to be eye-catching, where a Contact Monkey newsletter is often more wordy, to say the least. So at this time, no, our focus is keeping your content within AppSpace so you can distribute through AppSpace out to your various channels. Anything to add?
Yeah, one thing, Bronwyn, I'd add to that is, and love to engage with the folks asking the question on this one as we look at our roadmap through the rest of the year and how we plan to expand on this partnership. One area that we're working on is leveraging things like QR codes to be able to reference emails that have been distributed. So think of a world where you could take a Contact Monkey email. You could essentially make a copy of that email that could be published into an AppSpace intranet. Could be published into a publicly accessible URL or a secure URL on the internet. And then a QR code could be used to scan and go and read that content. So one thing that we've had feedback on, especially when you get to deskless workers, is that need to be able to quickly scan a QR code and then link through to some content. So if that's something of interest to the folks listening today, obviously myself and Bronwyn, we'd love to hear from you on that front as we start to figure out how we evolve this partnership longer term.
Excellent, thank you. Next question in the Q&A is, will everyone who receives an email in Contact Monkey be able to access all linked AppSpace links, or are there any sharing, viewing permissions that we need to be aware of and adjust? I might let AppSpace speak to that one a little bit. From my understanding, the stories there can live within channels, which likely also can be controlled in terms of permissions, but can you expand on that?
Yeah, Will, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm still cleaning up a little bit. But yeah, so the content, and actually, let me turn my camera back on. Apologies all. Again, what a day. Um, so yeah, stories, for example, in app space, they typically live in channels, but they can live in a lot of different formats, right, for the right kind of consumption. So a channel we typically think of as like top-down communication. So that may be top-down, again, feeding into Contact Monkey email, maybe in your news feed in app space, your intranet, might also be in a digital sign, right? The same content just reformatted. But those could also live in, for example, communities or topics. So topics being more of like a knowledge base, right? A repository. Um, Communities, right, being more kind of bottom up or horizontal communication, right? Or maybe you're authoring content for your team or things like that, that maybe then gets distributed more broadly because it's of interest to everyone, but is really focused on that core group. Chris, in case I missed anything, I'm probably a little bit frazzled. I'll throw it back to you in case there are any other notes you want to touch on there.
Yeah, no, I think that was the perfect response, Will. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Another question. A little bit of a segue. Do we get low engagement when we are using our Contact Monkey surveys? Any suggestions to get more? Rosemary, I'd love to connect with you directly on this one and see how you're currently using them. From my understanding, a lot of it has to do with placement within the email, making sure it's kind of above the fold, so to speak, to make sure you are getting those people that open and only read about halfway down before they drop off. But Ryan, do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and again, be a great opportunity to have a follow-up discussion here. Uh, One of the biggest challenges here is disrupting someone's workflow. And at the end of the day, when someone has to click a link in an email that launches a browser, a web page comes up. Oftentimes we find people are probably a little intrusive with their surveys, maybe too many questions, too many pieces of feedback they're looking for. I have to fill in a form in a web page. I've got to close the browser. I've got to go back to my email, and it's disrupted my flow of activity. And so one of the things that we're looking at is simpler interaction mechanisms. So for example, in Outlook, there's a concept of an actionable message. And that's a capability that Microsoft delivers that allows you to stay within the email body itself, click on an action, maybe it's a thumbs up, thumbs down, a scale of 1 to 5, buttons. You can even provide some text-based feedback, hit submit effectively, and stay within that message body. And later you can come back and you can see, what did I respond? How did I respond to this? So that's something that we're exploring. Love to talk to you deeper about that. But I would say in general, keep them simple. To Broman's point, figure out where you're placing them, and then see where it goes from there. But do reach out. Love to talk to you. We've got some other ideas on this front. Not something we're quite ready to talk about in the public arena, but that leverages AI and chat-like experiences. So do give us a shout. Happy to share that in a smaller forum.
All right, a question from Tiffany. Could you speak to the mechanics of building content modularly? Is that about the way AppSpace parses what you create? I'm not too sure if someone spoke about that directly. Chris, you're nodding like you know.
Yeah. So really the idea with creating content modularly, it's all about creating content once and then deciding where you want to publish that message. So with AppSpace, it's very easy to create one piece of content and then publish that to your digital sign, to your intranet, to your mobile app, bring it into your Contact Monkey newsletters. So that's really what we talk about with the modularity of content, the ability to create content once and publish it across your entire workforce. to multiple audiences too. So with digital signage, you can dictate which devices you send that message to. In terms of the intranet, we have audiences, so you can dictate um, which types of employees receive that message to.
Love it. There's a couple questions in the chat I'm going to catch up on. Does the platform allow uploading and playing videos? I'm not sure if that's specific to AppSpace or to Contact Monkey, so let's talk about both. With Contact Monkey, yes, you can embed a video into your email. Playing an email is a separate thing, but the link is clickable and you can hit play and the recipient can view whatever video you've put into your emails. AppSpace.
So AppSpace supports playing videos for streaming on digital signs, so you can upload videos and have them be displayed on a digital display. We also support video uploads into our internet product as well.
Love it. All right. With this integration, if we are already using Contact Monkey, do we need to also contract AppSpace, or is this an integration available to Contact Monkey clients? So this is a partnership. So we would need you to speak with AppSpace and make sure you are set up for success on their side. But we'll make that process easy and connect you together. Is there anything I'm missing there, Ryan and Chris?
On our side, it's something that we've made available to all our clients. So for the joint customers who are leveraging Contact Monkey and AppSpace, this isn't something that's charged. It's not a special add-on or anything like that. It's a capability available to everyone. Very easy to set up. Probably not the kind of thing you'd want to spend your time on a webinar seeing, but there's a simple API key on the AppSpace side of things that you bring into the Contact Monkey environment, a very common way to integrate SaaS platforms. And then once that's placed in, that gives us the permissions to be able to look into that environment, leveraging that secure key. And from there, that allows us to provide that experience that Roman showed you where you're navigating those AppSpace stories and you're able to seamlessly drop those into a Contact Monkey email.
Great. All right, one more question, Q&A. If anyone has more, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box or drop them in the chat. We're keeping an eye on that as well. But question from David, do we know if animated graphics and images can be included in a graphic display? Oh, sorry, that are already included in a graphic display can also be remixed seamlessly across display mediums with the AppSpace X Contact Monkey crossover. So my answer to this would be yes, because you are managing those graphics within AppSpace. AppSpace does allow you to create various mediums and images across all of your channels. And when you're using an image in your AppSpace story and insert it into Contact Monkey, we pull that into Contact Monkey directly. So you don't need to manage it outside of AppSpace or outside of Contact Monkey. It's the upload in one place and share across multiple channels. But Chris, anything to add there?
No, I don't think so. That was perfect, Roman.
Wonderful. Any other Q&A? Any other chats? No, nothing I see here.
Fantastic. So with that, it's time to wrap up. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I hope you found the insights to be informative and the demo to be valuable in helping you understand what's possible and some of where we're headed with this partnership. As you can see, this is the first cut, the first integration point we've created between the two platforms, and we have a lot more in mind as we move through the rest of this year. Driving that roadmap, of course, is key to get the feedback from yourselves as people who are using the platforms and what would help you get the most value out of your investment in AppSpace and in Contact Monkey, and help you reduce the amount of time that you spend with that swivel chair integration, copying, pasting between different platforms. We think there's a lot more we can do there to help you, so please reach out. Bronwyn shared on our side, product@contactmonkey.com. Our eyes and ears are always open. I'm sure that Chris and Will, you have a similar method for people to be able to contact you, and maybe you want to share if there's an email address. Maybe it's just chris@appspace.com. I don't know. But maybe you give us something here, and then I'll take us across the line.
Yeah, all those details will be available on our follow-up communications to all of our attendees.
Fantastic. So hopefully helpful information. This webinar is recorded. You'll receive an email with a link to it after the fact. Feel free to share that around. We'd love your feedback on the webinar, on the content itself. And so as soon as we close, there'll be a quick survey that's going to pop up. We just talked about surveys and engagement. We know we never get 100%, but I'd love it if all of you could take the time, just through the principle of reciprocity. Hopefully, we've given you some value today. Love it if you could fill in that survey. And with that, thanks very much for your time, and we'll close things up.